Why don't you begin by just talking about how you came to Thornton
How I
and
came to
became the first
well,
police chief?
uh, received a message from the Mayor Bill Leary of Thornton, Colorado, and they were building the city of Thornton. And he had heard of me through a friend of mine, and he had contacted. And after I came back from World War II, I was ready to go to work, and he asked me would I come up and to be a chief of police, consider it, of Thornton. He said it wasn't much money coming in, but he would make it available that they would have money later. And I thought it was a good thing that I had this opportunity that my wife was having ailments, wasn't feeling too good, and we had been in Colorado a year or two before. And I thought it would improve my wife's conditions to be here. As everybody says, it's so warm in Louisiana, which 100 degrees is pretty warm. Sometimes it gets to 105 and 6 and 8. Makes it a little bit warmer. But we decided we would like to come up here, and so I took Mr. Bill Leary's information and contacted him again and talked to my chief of police. I was presently employed as a patrolman in West Monroe, Louisiana. And we decided that I would come up first, and when school was out, my wife would bring my daughter with her on up then, and we would move here. So I came on ahead and made plans to buy a home, and which the home I'm living in right now, 9111 Hoffman Way. This was a new home, and the guys were leaving here going to Arizona in a building project, the Hoffman family and the Hoffman brothers. And so I just hit the right house, the right time for sale. So I finally wound up paying $12,500 for the house, in which I was proud to have a home like this for that type of a price, because the houses were selling at $10,500 in the area right here. But some improvements were put on this house, and we had the fireplace, which is here to my left, and the logs, burning logs in it. And this guy had put out quite a bit of money on the place and added to it. And so I had to give a little more than average for the average home here, which is all right. So,
Okay, you when you came to Thornton, you met Bill Leary, who was the mayor, and the first city attorney, who was Oral Daniel. Could you talk about those two people?
That was the gentleman I met, and become acquainted with the mayor. And when I came here to Colorado, it was real nice and warm, pleasant the day I got here. The next morning I woke up and I started going up the street here to one of the officers that I had met, It was already employed here. And when I got up there, came a heck of a snow. And during the day it snowed to where it was about 8 or 9 inches deep. And I almost started buckling up my shoes to start walking back to Louisiana because I didn't think I was going to make it through the snow. Well, I said if I did, they'd call me chicken if I went back. And I said I never could stand that word, to be called chicken. So I proceeded on to fight it out. I didn't care how deep the snow got or how rough it got. I was going to fight it out to the end because I didn't want to go back to Louisiana. It's too warm to live in that part of the country. So we tended here, organizing and getting set up for the picking officers that were men that would make officers, and all I could get to start with was volunteers. And these men were very helpful all the way around. When they would get off of duty, they'd come right on up to the office, get with me, and they would buy their own uniforms and own guns and own equipment, and probably would have bought their badge if they had to, but the city did turn loose and buy some badges. And I proceeded to have a little schooling set up there that we could train these men to be an officer, and their performance of duty that they wouldn't get us in trouble. And they were glad to do this. They would come to the school, and we would have some teachers from surrounding areas to help us, and they all volunteered to help every way it was possible to make it more comfortable and more entertaining. And these guys would come take an hour or two of training at night and get in a car and go out and police a little. And if they made an arrest, it would be somebody drunk and driving in this performance of duty. And they were given first-hand information how to handle these people and what to do and to bring them in. And then they began to spread out and get farther out in the law enforcement, and we would teach them the methods how to handle people of this type. It wasn't very long before we had people that was learning, and they was willing to learn all they could about the police work. And we helped every way as possible to avoid anything occurring, and assisted by the mayor, Bill Leverett. He was a very good man, a very good trainer for me. And being in a separate country than where I was before, I did police work. I did a lot of training, shooting, and stuff like this to take training. And we'd have, you may go ahead with the training, we would go to New Orleans, and the city would send so many men, 2 or 3 men of the group in each city, to New Orleans on these training bases. And a fellow by the name of, can't think of his name, anyway, the trainer of the group, he was trained in El Paso, Texas under his father. He was a specially trained police officer, and he was building a bag factory in West Monroe. And so he would give a 3-day training down there, and he would advise us. We would all go in together and do the training. After the training, we would have a party of the first night, and then he would join us. And then we would have a big party and dance and eating and everything. And then he would give us our score for shooting. And I can relay the message to you, the score. And scoring is wasn't very hard to do. That you were placed about 20 feet away from the 5 targets of a human. And you were given a box of shells, and they would tell you to load this gun, and we were only allowed to load 5 shells and a revolver. That's the type of gun we used. 38 revolver. And you had so many seconds from the signal to draw and fire all 5 shots in the 5 targets, 1 in each target. And it had to be a death hit, somewhere around the heart or in the chest, and to count. And the time was 1 7/10 of a second to fire all 5 shots in the target. And if you made that, you made a score of all of the detail. There were 7 events, and each event where you're in different positions, load your gun, sometimes to your back to the gun, to the targets, and you were given a signal to draw your gun and fire while you pivot on your feet and fire 5 shots in the targets, 5 targets. You still had 1 7/10 seconds to empty your gun to make the score. And this I could do because it come very, very easily for me to do this, because I practice at home a whole lot by taking a little brush and holding this brush up, and give me a signal. I drop the brush and draw my gun and let it hit the end of the barrel of every shot. And I got where I could hold the brush out, straight-handed, parallel with me, and they give me a signal, and I draw and hit the gun no more than a drop from my hand. I got it at 1.5 seconds. I could empty my gun 1.5 seconds into the targets. And I said, well, I beat myself. I was doing it 1 7, and I said I trained myself to do it 1.5 seconds. So I have that information, and I brought this with me, and it'll be given to the officers of my group to protect his life and to be real quick and active with it. When I first came here, I had to figure out some ways, because the city didn't have any money to buy cars, or patrol cars, or communications of any type. And so we had to arrange some system to get communication and get cooperation. So I thought about putting up a big tall timber up above the the place where we stayed, the Quonset hut, and put a red light on top of this where it could be seen all over the city. And then I would get quicker communication and contacts with people of the police department. And I had one car, patrol car, and it was a used state patrolman's car. And they sold it to me for $450 from the state. And so I would take these officers out, more or less, to the schools and place one at each school in front of the school where they could help the children across to avoid accidents. And I'd get 4 or 5 of them out, and then I would handle the system that I had there. If I got a phone call or a wreck or if anything had happened, I would turn this red light on, which could be seen by all of my officers, and they would go to the phone and call in, all 5 or 6 of them, which group I had out. And the closest to this, he would have to walk or somebody, flag somebody down to go to this accident or whatever it was, so he could be there. And he'd make communications with me then later and tell me that he was there and he took care of it and he was ready to come back in. Well, I had a driver of my car. I could send my car out and go get him and bring him in to bring the report in. And this made it a little more convenient and quicker for us to take a hold. And so we did this, and the people were amazed at such as this because they never had seen such as this go on. They were used to officers, qualified men, and I said, the thing we had to do, we had to grow because we didn't have any money to buy the equipment. We didn't have money to buy stuff to deal with. Cars was one thing. Communication is another. And I said, they cost a lot of money. And I said, this is the way we started crawling before we started walking. This is what helped us. Virgil Jackson was my assistant. And Virgil and I worked hard together. Virgil would go out some nights and I'd give him a person to be looking for and to make contact with that he was wanted for crime. And Virgil sometimes would work all night, be on the next morning. And I'd make contact with him. He'd give me the information, what he obtained. And then at times, Virgil never did have no set time to go eat or take any time off. He worked all the time. And the same thing that I did, I would go out and work. Some nights I'd be out 12, 1 o'clock at night, and sometimes I'd be called out at night, 12, 1 o'clock, to assist and help. And I said we proceeded to work together, communicate together. And when he'd be off, he'd call in to advise me where he was, that he was all right, and if I had anything for him. So I would give him his duties to work on. He only tell about his brother getting killed. And so one night, right dark, or about, I'd say 8 or 9 o'clock, it had a wreck up at the 104th, and it was one of the deputy sheriffs in the wreck. And this is the information we received. And so I got a hold of all of the officers and advised them of this, but we didn't know who the party was that was involved, but it happened to be Virgil's brother, older brother. He was had an emergency call, and he was on the west side, 104th, patrolling. There wasn't any bridge across the highway. It was too early for the bridge to even think about being built. And so his proceeding to come back, he came back such a force down into the highway that he went on down into the highway and hit the back end of a semi-trailer, killed him. That's where he had the wreck. And we were all there to get everything straightened out from the wreck, and I had to get a hold of Virgil and take him up there to help pick up his brother that got killed in this wreck. And he was a deputy sheriff. I've hunted with Frank and his group a year before that, and we've killed quite a few deer together. And Frank Jaskin, to my opinion, was one of the best deputy sheriffs of my seeing that could be on the department, because he was very helpful. He did not back up from any call. He did not back from any assignment he was given. And his brother, Virgil, my assistant, worked the same way, that he'd fight if he had to, 2 or 3 or 4 people. It didn't make any difference how many. One time we were called out at Bennett, and Virgil was out there, and he had a few guys rounded up out there, and they started a battle on Virgil. And we went out to help him, but he didn't need any help when we got there. He had them under control. So I'll still say Virgil Jackson was a big help to me in my performance of duty. He may look at you and blink a few times, but he was willing to work. And that's what we needed. We needed people to back us up and to work, and no end of time. We just keep working. I put in high 16, 18 hours in a day, a lot of days. And Virgil has done the same thing, work all night and work all day. And it didn't seem to bother either one of us. We just kept on working. Well, we were quite a few cops in Colorado then, here in the Thornton, Denver area. And to find a group that was honest and fair was, your eyes were open for this. You kept watching for people that would be fair and be honest to make a cop. And I know that the district attorney came to me one time and advised me of the circumstances going on that he was trying to eliminate, which he was trying to get information on, and he asked my help. So I agreed with him that we would do some bird dogging, and we'd have to be very closely united, cooperated together on this, because certain things were brought up that there were quite a few officers from Denver area were implicated with it, and also of other parts of Thornton. And we had one of the officers here in Thornton was connected with the FBI, at least he advised me this, that he was wanting to run for sheriff. I just won't call his name, but I just advise you that he was implicated in this deal, and he was a lookout man when they were constructing the Safeway stores in this areas all through. And he was one of the leader guys to be on the lookout and watch for breaks and so forth of the Safeway stores and when it could be robbed. And the Safeway stores, most of them was robbed except in Thornton. I had one officer that I banked on real heavy because his name was, I don't mind calling his name, it's Virgil Jackson. Virgil would dress differently and be on the watch out maybe all night or all evening as long as it's anybody out prowling around. And he would be constantly observing the Safeway store was being constructed to give license plate numbers, how many people were in the car, what type of car, every time it went by that store. And he come up with a guy, and it kept being the same car, same guy by himself. So he'd pass this to me, then I'd contact the district attorney and relay the message to him, which he was accumulating all the information he could get because he was the one to bring the people into court. And so eventually, he got enough evidence to bring a certain guy into court. And this guy, when he went into court, they called his name and he came up, they brought him in and asked him to repeat his name. Put his hand on the Bible and raised his right hand. And the instant he did this, I was there. I spoke up, I said, Lord, make him confess what he knows, true. And the Lord answered my prayer. I just know that was, he relayed it right to him right quick. He got he called his name and said, repeated what had happened. And he told a straight truth about it. I praised him very highly for the truth. I said that he can be forgiven for his sin that he has been into. But he couldn't feel if he's going to lie about it or try to get her out of it. And so I said, made several visits. He was convicted of his crime and given 5-year sentence. And I had the privilege to go down to the state penitentiary a time or two to carry prisoners from the sheriff's department with the sheriff, with the deputy sheriff. And I made it my business to go and make contact with this man that was in there. And I always went to him and shook hands with him and felt that he did a good deed by telling the truth. And I still say, in my life, I praise him very highly for what he did for telling the truth. Have a report on any money being lost on this. These 2 little young guys come running in my office one day and said, Oscar, said, we want to see you a minute. And I said, well, ask them to come on in. I opened the door for them. They came in and they had a large envelope with full of money. I said, where'd you kids get this money? We found it. And I said, well, where'd you find it? So we found the location they found it, and I went back over this location to find out if they were fibbing. Thought maybe they might have been fibbing to me. And maybe they'd been in somebody's home, something, you see. So I didn't accuse them of anything. I says, let's find out if we can find the owner. So I sent the officers up, one or two officers up to the store, commissary, to find out close to where they found the money. And they come to find out that there was a party that had lost this money. And these two little fellows found it, and they run to me with it to get help to find out who owned it, so they could get their reward for finding it. They wasn't worried about the amount. They was worried about a little reward, what they were going to get, because they found it. So I thought, well, that would be nice. I said, let's get the guy, get a photograph picture of the kids. So they wanted me in there with them. So I threw them in the picture, and then when we found out who the money belonged to, and we advised them to come to the police station, they came up there, and I introduced them, the two boys, to this party that lost this money. And I says, now you made your friend, and being honest and fair. And so this guy donated them a certain amount of money. I don't know what he gave them, but he gave them part of it. And shook hands with them and told them if there's anything he could do for them, to call him by name, and he would come and help them of any trouble they ever got in. So the kids kept coming by the office there talking about this.